Visit to the border wall. President Donald Trump makes remarks on his way to Texas as Democrats continue to try and remove him from office. Capital punishment. New developments in the scheduled execution of a woman on death row. And changing canon law. Analysis of the Holy Father's letter yesterday regarding the role of women as lectors and altar servers during Mass. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Donald Trump denounces violence and says the second impeachment effort against him is absolutely ridiculous and is causing tremendous anger. Those efforts by lawmakers to impeach the president and kick him out of office are coming to a head over the next 24 hours. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you. President Donald Trump told reporters today the second impeachment is akin to another witch hunt, and he warns against using the 25th Amendment to oust him from office, saying that would come back to haunt the incoming Biden administration.
Mr. President!
Before heading to Texas today to visit the border wall, President Donald Trump addressed reporters for the first time about the deadly violence on Capitol Hill 6 days ago.
As far as this is concerned, we want no violence, never violence. We want absolutely no violence.
Now, less than a week later, Democrats are set to pass a resolution calling on Vice President Mike Pence to remove President Trump using the 25th Amendment.
By his actions and inactions on January 6th, the president has proven that he is unable to discharge the duties and powers of his office. I wish he would resign.
Impeachment proceedings are set for tomorrow. The charge, incitement of insurrection. But the Senate would have to convict.
So I think what we are doing in the House is essentially setting it up, making it possible to remove him as quickly as possible if we learn that one additional fact that would convince the Senate to act.
The president accusing those planning a second impeachment of stoking division.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. This impeachment is causing tremendous anger. And you're doing it, and it's really a terrible thing that they're doing.
The president also spoke to reporters at Joint Base Andrews in the wake of big tech censorship and a ban on his Twitter account.
They're dividing and divisive.
And he denies his speech last week right before the Capitol unrest led to the violence.
But they've analyzed my speech and my words and my final paragraph, my final sentence, and everybody to the T thought it was totally appropriate.
Also tonight, 15,000. That's how many National Guard members are being deployed to the nation's capital in the run-up to the inauguration for security purposes. Meanwhile, tonight, the FBI is warning of plans for nationwide armed protests next week. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
We turn now to oral arguments before the Supreme Court today in an important First Amendment case that looks at whether lawsuits seeking only symbolic damages can go forward after the unconstitutional policy has been changed, or if that change is enough to consider the case moot. Plaintiff Chike Uzabuma is seeking to hold Georgia Gwinnett College accountable for having twice violated his right to publicly share his faith while a student there, despite the college's change to its policies a few months after its initial lawsuit was filed. Joining me now on Skype is Kate Anderson, Senior Counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom, which is representing Chike Uzabuma in this case. Kate, welcome, and thanks so much for being here. Let's go back for a moment and talk about what your client experienced as a college student there. What exactly happened, and how was he silenced?
Well, Chike wanted to share his religious beliefs with fellow students by passing out literature about the Bible and by having one-on-one conversations with other students. He tried to do this in a public area of campus like he saw other speakers doing in the same kinds of areas, but he was stopped by college officials and told that he had to get advance permission for his speech, and he had to go to one of two tiny zones to speak. He did what they asked, and then he was stopped again, this time by campus police officers who said that because somebody complained about his sharing his his faith, he had to stop speaking altogether. The case went forward to the courts, and now the issue is before the Supreme Court, as you said today, asking whether individuals can hold government officials responsible even after they change a policy for the past harm that was done to them. You see, Chike can never go back to campus and speak to those students again, and that's why he needs redress for that injury.
Yeah, and I understand that the school officials argue that since the campus policy was changed, that was enough to declare this case moot. Is that accurate? And why do you think it's important to allow this case to continue?
It's not accurate. Certainly changing the policy is a step. We don't want the college to continue violating other people's rights. But in the meantime, Chike can never go back to that moment. He can't share his faith on campus the way that he wanted to, and that is a concrete harm to his person, and it needs to be redressed. There are plaintiffs like him with these First Amendment type claims. There are also plaintiffs in other cases involving other rights, any constitutional right, where it's hard to prove damages. It's hard to prove a monetary cost, but there still is a harm. And that's why the courts provide a mechanism for these cases to go forward. And you heard the justices talking about that today.
And Kate, I know a wide range of groups with different ideologies. They've all voiced their support in his case. What are the implications here for future First Amendment cases?
Yes, you saw people from various ideological positions that aren't usually in agreement come together in this case and file briefs with the court voicing their support for this idea that all individuals who suffer a constitutional harm should have an ability to hold government officials accountable. And this is important for us to have these First Amendment freedoms in particular, because if we aren't able to hold government officials accountable for violating them, then the rights really don't mean much at all.
And Kate, what message do you think is being sent by asking for nominal damages? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
People have a lot of questions about nominal damages because it's really just $1, but it's an important dollar. We're talking about freedoms that it's hard to put a price tag on. Certainly our constitutional rights aren't worth $1, but they're worth something and something important. And so the courts have set out this $1 as a symbol, as a way of saying you deserve something, you should be paid something, these rights are important, and we're going to make government officials do something affirmative to recognize that those rights are valuable. Certainly it's a small amount, but it's an important amount.
And Kate, before we let you go, where do things stand right now and where do you go from here?
Well, the case was argued this morning before the U.S. Supreme Court. We heard wonderful questions from the justices, recognizing how important these principles are to protect all of our freedoms. But the case has now been submitted to the court fully, and we will be awaiting a decision, which may take until the end of the term, which ends in June.
Okay, and we'll be watching. Thank you so much, Kate. Kate Anderson, Senior Counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom. Thank you again.
Thank you.
A federal judge today halted the planned executions of 2 inmates who were diagnosed with COVID-19. This as Catholic bishops renewed their call to end capital punishment. And now Democratic lawmakers are unveiling legislation to eliminate the federal death penalty. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is showing support of the federal death penalty Prohibition Act. In 2019, the Trump administration reinstated the federal death penalty after a nearly 2 decades lapse in its use. But Democrats will soon control Congress, and with the backing of President-elect Joe Biden, they hope to put a stop to it.
We have to pass my bill to abolish the death penalty.
2 Democratic lawmakers lead a new effort to end capital punishment at the federal level. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley writes, "State-sanctioned murder is not justice, and the death penalty, which kills black and brown people disproportionately, has absolutely no place in our society." Senator Dick Durbin joins her, saying, "Our bill follows the lead of 22 states, including Illinois, by finally putting an end to this failed and unjust policy." Kristen Day, the executive director of Democrats for Life, supports the legislation.
We're pro-life for the whole life, and we don't think that violence is ever the answer.
In 2018, Pope Francis revised the Catholic Church Catechism to describe the death penalty as inadmissible.
An abortion ends a life in violence, and so does the death penalty.
Yesterday, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops made another urgent plea to stop federal executions, writing, "Following a year where the federal government for the first time executed more people than all 50 states combined, we renew our constant call to President Trump and Acting Attorney General Rosen, stop these executions." Last night, one of those executions was temporarily halted by a federal judge. Today, Lisa Montgomery was slated to be the first female executed by the U.S. government in almost 70 years. Her lawyers argue she is mentally ill. Her case is being reviewed. In 2015 remarks to Congress, Pope Francis called for a worldwide end to executions.
The global abolition of the death penalty.
And in its new statement, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops says it is long past time to abolish the death penalty from our state and federal laws, and we call on the new Congress and President-elect Joe Biden to make this a priority. In the studio, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Our Catholic bishops in New Jersey are calling for a day of prayer and fasting to support a culture of life. It will take place January 22nd, the anniversary of the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade decision that mandated legal abortion nationwide. The bishops say that they will remember the millions of lives lost to abortion and will pray for the mothers and fathers left to suffer. Coming up, an update on the fight against the coronavirus from a medical doctor in New York. The Trump administration announced major changes today in its COVID-19 vaccine distribution approach. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar says the government will no longer hold back required second doses of vaccines, practically doubling supply. And he says states should immediately start vaccinating other groups, including people age 65 and older, as well as younger people with certain health problems. Dr. Bob Lahita, professor of medicine at New York Medical College and chairman of medicine at St. Joseph University Hospital, joins me now on Skype to talk more about this and some of the other developments in the nation's fight against COVID-19. Dr. Lahita, welcome back. Great to see you. As of yesterday morning, the government had good to have you on. As of yesterday, the government had distributed about 25.5 million doses, but only about 9 million people had received their first shot. How significant do you think these new changes will be in getting more people vaccinated?
I think this is going to be a wonderful advance going forward, because what we really need to do is get the vaccine into people's arms. I've heard of all kinds of suggestions, from having the National Guard learn to give injections, to having EMTs, volunteer EMTs in various communities give injections. We really need people that know what they're doing to give these shots so that we can go 24/7. It's not just a day job where you give 24/7, 7 days a week, where we can immunize just about everybody. And I'm sure if we do that, within a couple of weeks, we'll have millions of people vaccinated.
And Dr. Lahita, since you and I last spoke, a new strain of the virus has been identified and is causing some great concern. What more do we know about it, and how effective are the current vaccines in fighting it?
Well, let me go with the strains. First of all, viruses mutate. We've known that for decades. This virus is no exception to that. And as a virus really infects a community, mutations occur, just like influenza, just like measles. And so the B117 strain arrived in the UK. Then there's one in South Africa, which is the N501Y. Both of these are extremely infective, meaning, at least at the present time, what we know from science is that these viruses stick very assiduously to the ACE2 receptor, which is the receptor in your nose, your eyes, and your mouth. And throughout your body, there are ACE2 receptors. So once this virus gains a foothold, that's what happens. Now, these mutations there were 23 of them, actually. 17 were of significance. 8 of them were particularly significant. And one of them, which I mentioned, the N501Y, was very, very significant in that it seemed to alter the stickiness of the spike protein of the virus to the receptor, which means that it seems to infect young people with greater efficiency than the old folks that we are currently immunizing. And that means that this could be very infective. And the Brits saw this with the B117. They saw that people were getting infected at a rate of 50 to 70% more commonly. And right now, I understand the UK is almost in total lockdown because of the the infectivity rate of this new strain of virus. However, the vaccine works. I'm told by the Pfizer and Moderna people that right now, at this time, the vaccine works against these new strains. Tracy?
And that is very good news. Johns Hopkins University data shows that COVID-19 hospitalizations right now in the U.S. have surpassed 100,000 for the last 40 straight days. What are you seeing there in New York, and what's your biggest concern when it comes to COVID-19?
Well, my biggest concern are the people who are unpredictably ill. So it's like Russian roulette in a way. People are saying, well, you know, I'm very healthy. I'm an athlete. I run track, I run or I jog 3 miles a day, and then they get the COVID-19 and all of a sudden they're flat on their back and gasping for air. And we have to intubate them, and sometimes they don't live beyond 3 days. That's the exception, certainly, but the virus is very infective, and I am concerned that people are letting their guard down, they're not wearing masks, they're not washing their hands, and they're not socially distancing. Now, I understand people have fatigue for this sort of thing, but you've really got to remember that we've just rolled out the vaccine now, and it's going to take a while for herd immunity to happen. So even if you've been vaccinated, as I have, as you see here, I still wear a mask. I still wash my hands. In fact, I made rounds today wearing rubber gloves and my scrub suit just because I'm fully aware of the fact that I can still transmit the virus even though I've had a vaccine, and others can give it to me as well.
Well, Dr. Lahita, we got to leave it right there, but always appreciate you coming on and always appreciate your analysis. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tracy.
Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI is set to receive the coronavirus vaccine. The 93-year-old's personal secretary says the vaccination will take place as soon as possible. Pope Francis also booked an appointment to receive the vaccine. India is beginning to ship COVID-19 vaccines around the country.
Authorization मिला है. उसके अलावा ये 4 वैक्सीन हैं.
It is the world's largest vaccine program, and health officials say it will start this weekend. In the first phase, 30 million doctors and nurses will be vaccinated. Then the focus will turn to inoculating 270 million people over the age of 50, that is, and then those with health problems. And the first shipments of the Moderna vaccine are arriving in Italy and Spain. Boxes of the vaccine arrived in Spain early today. They include over 35,000 doses. That is enough to vaccinate nearly 13,000 people. Health authorities plan to distribute them equally to Spain's autonomous regions. And in Italy, a refrigerated truck delivered Moderna vaccines this morning. The first of the 470,000 Moderna doses are expected to be distributed across Italy's regions in 293 vaccination centers. Italy is considering new restrictions set to start this weekend. Israel is leading the world in vaccinating its population after trading the Pfizer vaccine for medical data.
We will know how many people with, say, history of heart diseases had been vaccinated and whether there were any effects, any unfortunate cases, and so on and so forth.
With its universal health care, Israel has become a testing ground for Pfizer's vaccine. Officials stress that no personal information is shared with the company. Israel started distributing the vaccine last month and has already vaccinated nearly 2 million people. Officials plan to have most of the country vaccinated by March. Up next, a closer look at the change Pope Francis made to Canon Law regarding women lectors. The Vatican announced that Ash Wednesday will be a little different this year due to the coronavirus pandemic. The Vatican is directing priests to say the formula, for example, repent and believe in the gospel once to everyone present, and then to distribute ashes by sprinkling them on the head instead of on the forehead in silence. This year, Ash Wednesday is February 17th. Pope Francis urges those who care for the sick to build relationships of trust with their patients. In a message for next month's World Day of the Sick, the Holy Father says Jesus calls us to stop and to listen to everyone. He also asks us to let the suffering of others become our own. As we mentioned yesterday, Pope Francis officially recognized women serving as lectors, altar servers, and helping to distribute Holy Communion at Mass. In a letter released yesterday, the Holy Father writes in part, quote, "The Synod of Bishops have highlighted the need to deepen the subject doctrinally so that it may respond to the needs of the times." Joining us now to tell us more about this is Sister Catherine Joseph Droste, Dean of Theology at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, also known as the Angelicum University. Sister Catherine, welcome back. Great to see you. So tell us, what exactly does yesterday's change in canon law from the Holy Father mean?
Thank you, Tracy. It's good to be back here. Regarding the change yesterday, it's not terribly dramatic in one sense. What happened is the Pope wrote a motu proprio with an accompanying letter making a change to Canon 130. He only made a change to the first paragraph, and the first paragraph used to say that laymen could be formally instituted as lectors and acolytes. I would note the next paragraph actually allowed for all laity, laymen and laywomen, to serve as lectors and acolytes on a temporary basis, which is what we're used to. Many of us have served as lectors, or we have young women, young men who've served as servers at the Mass, assisting at the altar and assisting at the Word. So what changed is that that first paragraph now says not only laymen can be formally instituted as to a permanent or a more stable position in one of these capacities, but that also women as well can be.
And quickly, do we know why Pope Francis made this announcement now?
Oh, there's a lot of speculation on that. There's always a great deal of speculation. But I think there are a few key indicators. He himself mentioned the recent synods, especially the most recent, the Amazonian Synod, where there's been a call for a deepening in the theology, a deepening in the understanding of the role of the laity, a deepening of understanding of the charisms and the ministries. And he was trying to respond to that in a way where we see a continuity. As we said, we've already had people practicing these ministries in the church, but also is something that allows for perhaps further theological study, further preparation for the laity, further education, and this is a positive thing. We need this for the reform of the church. We need the laity who understand more, even as priests as well. We need priests and religious and laity who all understand what are these sacraments, but especially the sacrament of the Eucharist. And what are all of these other roles that play, these roles of service? I think the key, what I see this as an opportunity, is for understanding service. The service of lector, the service of acolyte. So the Pope, I think he's responding to those synods, but also he's expanding upon what began with Vatican II and the emphasis on the laity and their role. And he's giving us an opportunity to deepen our understanding of the Eucharist, to deepen our understanding of what the priest does in his role, but also to a deeper understanding, an opportunity to have a deeper understanding of our role of participation in the Eucharist as laity.
Well, Sister, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Sister Catherine Joseph Droste, Dean of Theology at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy. God bless.
And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.